Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. It's a Friday before St. Patrick's Day. I'm Irish, so always excited for a nice St. Patrick's Day weekend. Hope you all are doing very well. Today, I just wanted to get into some numbers that you should probably be aware of when you are looking at colleges and building your college list they might not be familiar with. A lot of times when we think of colleges, unfortunately, we focus on the fame, right? How big is the name? You know, we want the bumper sticker, we want the flag, we want to be very proud and kind of brag about where we're going to school. And that's really not what we need to focus on. We need to make sure that we find schools that have the best academic fit, the best social fit, and the best financial fit. So one of the things that I wanted to go over outside of rankings and things like that is ultimately a couple numbers that I think when you build your school list and you're doing research on colleges that you should know. And one that gets tossed around a lot is graduation rate, right? So the unfortunate part of a college graduation rate is that it is based off of a 6-year number, or in other words, it's actually based off of 150% of time for whatever the typical amount of time it should take to graduate. So in other words, if you're studying for a 2-year degree, 150% of that would actually be 3 years. So if you graduate in 3 years for a 2-year program, you still graduated on time. 4-year program, right? It's actually within 6 years. So if you take 6 years to get that 4-year degree, well, you still graduated on time in the eyes of colleges and the government. And that's what a lot of schools, their graduation rate is actually based off of. So I think it's an important number without a doubt to know what the graduation rate is. But unfortunately, it's also a number that can be manipulated because as schools have kids that drop out, if they have schools that students that they bring in as transfer students. So if you have like a student that went to a different school year one and transferred in, well, they're considered a first year student, right? And so if they graduate 4 years later, they had a total of 5 years that they were in college, but they still consider them to have graduated in 4 years, right? So the schools can definitely, I'll say, manipulate some of those numbers that are graduation rate. So I wouldn't take it as 100% accurate when you see a school's graduation rate, but at the same time, it is an important statistic, right? How many students do actually graduate that attend? And some of the numbers that can be actually very shocking when you look at some of them. So to give you an idea of kind of some of the best and worst, we'll say well-known schools of where their graduation rates are at. Let me pull up the College Planning Network, and I did bookmark a couple schools. Just have to pull them up real quick. Where did I put it? There we go. So speaking of Irish St. Patty's Day, Notre Dame is actually very high on this list. So they have a 4-year graduation rate of 94%. Again, take it for what you want, but that's the highest in the country. And the 6-year graduation rate is 96%. When we look at some other schools that are kind of high on that 6-year piece, like it's pretty interesting. You see Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, right? They're at 98% and 97% on the 6-year time scale, which would be, still fall into the graduation rate. So they can say those schools, okay, yeah, we're 96, 97% graduation rate, but their 4-year graduation rate is actually more like 88%. So not as many students actually graduate in 4 years that, at these schools. And so I think it's very important to understand that. Now, when you look at some schools that do not have very good numbers, um, let's see, and I'm only going to use the 6-year graduation rate number. But at the lowest end, University of Nevada, Las Vegas has a 46% graduation rate. The University of Montana is a 48%. Florida Atlantic, 56%. I'm just going down my database here and looking at some schools that stick out. University of Louisville, 61%. Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, 62%. Let's see, what are some other well-known ones? Fordham, 83%. Gettysburg, 83%. Penn State, 83%. Syracuse, 83%. So again, these are all the 6-year graduation rate numbers. Another one, Penn State, what they have reported on here is a 4-year graduation rate is actually 69%. So I think graduation rate is extremely important to know, well, what percentage of students go to the school and actually earn their degree within an allotted time frame, whether it's 4 or 6 years. It's definitely important to know because that's, what are the chances that you might fall into that? If a school has a much higher graduation rate, you're much more likely to stay in and not drop out. Now, the other one that I think most people are not aware of, but schools will report what's known as a freshman retention rate. And I think this one is extremely important because a freshman retention rate is basically how many people that applied, got accepted, and enrolled at the college were there for the full first year, right? And or not actually, if they were a freshman, right? They enrolled and came back for their second year. So pretty interesting because you obviously would want to go to a school that has a high freshman retention rate. It's showing you not just from a graduation standpoint, but probably that social aspect, like how many people come to that school and they feel like it's the right fit for them. Also, I think finances can play a role into that, where you might go to school for a year, and if it's a school that is just too expensive or the kids are taking loans out and they realize it's probably not the best financial fit for them after, year one, they might opt to choose a more affordable path. So the retention rate is one that is, I think, very important that not many students and parents take a look at. And so you will see schools that have, 99, 98% retention rate, like University of Chicago and MIT, Dartmouth, Duke, Northeastern, Northwestern, Rice, Notre Dame. Like these are all 98, 99%. And so you should be able to look this up. Again, I use the College Planning Network. I think it's a great resource and tool that is available for clients. I went into that in my video last week about showing how to use the financial tool and inputting your financial numbers to figure out what a school is actually going to cost, and then showing on the back end the awards that a family received and how close we were to that expectation by using the College Planning Network. And so you can definitely find that financial fit to see if a school is going to be financially feasible for you based off of that, but also plenty of other information about the schools, what majors they offer, what's important in the application process, right? Is the GPAs and SATs, is it required? Does it go into, being really heavily weighted? Does character, does your essay being a legacy, like are those things important or not important? All wonderful facts that you can find on the College Planning Network when you're building a school list. So it's basically just the college search tool, and plenty of other benefits of being part of the College Planning Network that I always highly recommend. But I wanted to look at some schools that are at the lower end of this freshman retention rate. And because it's, again, a little surprising, right? One that jumps out at me was St. John's College, right? They only have 74% of the students that enroll come back for year two. Let's see, what are some of the other one? Boise State is at 78%. Louisville again is at 79%. University of Tampa, 80%. Florida Atlantic, 81%. So, and again, I think you have to compare when you're probably going to create a spreadsheet when you're building a college list and have a bunch of different data fields in what is important to you. But I think these are some that you can compare. If one school has a 98% freshman retention rate and another school has an 80%, it's a pretty significant difference. And there's a reason why, right? And again, if you want to know more, if you're looking at University of Tampa, right, and you visit that school and you say, all right, freshman retention rate is 80%, the 6-year graduation rate is 62%. When I'm going on a college visit, I'm asking those questions. Like, what are some of the top reasons that those numbers are low, right? I want to hear what the reasoning is behind that so I can see if the reasons why most people don't finish their degree or if most people why they leave after year one, does that essentially apply to me, right? Is it because they don't like being, a 6-hour plane ride from home, so that's why they don't stay? Is it other reasons that maybe the academic rigor was too hard? Was it a financial piece? Like, I would ask those questions on those visits because, again, you have to be able to justify why you would not fall into that 20% of kids that don't return or 40% of kids that don't graduate in 6 years. You got to avoid that. And so those are definitely big questions and some statistics that I think that you need to look at when researching your colleges and building the school list. The other thing that is quite shocking, and I don't think many people know this, is that only 18% of freshmen who start college and they are pursuing a 4-year degree will actually earn that degree within 4 years. And there are a multitude of reasons, whether it's they drop out, it's a financial piece, or more likely that they change their major or they transfer schools, and that extends their time in college. So that can push that 4-year to a 6-year time frame. And the fact that it's only 18% is pretty shocking because that means that almost 80% of college students are paying, right? Or their parents, but somebody is paying for more than 4 years of the education. And that has to be planned for. Now, the biggest way that you can avoid that extra year or two cost is by finding schools that really are that social fit, the academic fit, and the financial fit, right? You're going to a school that you like the environment. It's just either, just the right distance away from home or it's close enough to home. The students that are on campus, right, is somewhere that you feel safe, right? It's somewhere that you feel like you're part of the environment is right for you, right? That's really the social fit. You have to be happy when you wake up at college, right? You don't want to be waking up and looking outside and staring at buildings that you absolutely despise, right? If you wake up in the morning and you don't feel happy with where you're at, you're going to go to class in a bad mood. Now, that's going to hurt your retention. And if it hurts your retention, it most likely hurts your grades, right? On the flip side, if you are at a school that has a really good social fit and you wake up knowing that you are in a great location, a great place, exactly where you want to be, you're going to go to school or go to those classes in a better mood. You're going to retain more information, better grades leads to better internship opportunities. And look, good internship opportunities can lead to finding the best career path for you and finding the right job, right? Which ultimately is why we are going to college in the first place. So that's the social fit, again, that you're at a place you want to be at, right? And you're more likely to have the right grades, that it doesn't hold you back for being in school for another year or two. And you're at the right location, that you don't transfer. And then some of the credits that you took don't transfer to the new school and you have to basically retake courses, right? That's one of the ways that you avoid that. Being part of the 20% that doesn't graduate in 4 years. The other big one is changing your major. And if you're unfamiliar with this, again, if you're in school for a couple years, we'll say usually 2 years or more, and all of a sudden you figure out, man, this really isn't what I want to be doing. I want to change my major. Well, you probably took some credits that don't work towards the new major that you've declared. And now you have to take more classes. That means you're going to be in school for more than 4 years. And so that's where I also think the academic fit in picking the right major, you don't always have to have all of the answers, but knowing what pathway you're going to use. And I think that that is, again, when you build your school list, you have to ask questions, right? You have to know what you think you may want to do as you visit these schools, and then talk to professors, talk to the head of a department or the head of a program when you visit these schools to ask about the variance, right? Hey, if I want to be an engineer, do I have to pick a specific type of engineering? Right? If I change my mind, will that extend my life in college? Right? If I'm looking at business, but I want to change it, what are my options? Right? How does the school handle that? Ask questions about what the first year is like. And if you decide, hey, I'm a marketing major year one, but I want to change to be a psychology major after year one, are you now going to be in school for longer because of the classes that were assigned to you for that first year? Or do you have a good college and good counseling system that is, it's really the prerequisites that you're taking in that first year, so that if you do change your mind, it won't extend your life in college. These are all things that you should be asking when you're visiting a school to see how they can appropriately help you, right? And that's another thing. And we do, I'm a co-host of the College Knowledge podcast. We interview professors and administrators, deans, all across the country from very well-known schools, very well-known programs, and they all talk about the ability to help students, whether it's office hours or being, using the counselors at college. I don't want, really, students need to know that it's okay to ask for help, right? If you do want to change your major, don't go into it blind. Don't just think that you're going to do something. You don't know if it's the right pathway or not. Go to these people that have helped thousands of students for years before you, because they probably have seen someone with a similar situation that they might be able to offer some piece of advice to you, and really guide you through it. But finding that right academic fit, right, the right career path is, again, going to help narrow down that, from 6 to 4 year graduation. So you do fall into one of those 18% that graduates and earns that bachelor's degree within 4 years. Now, obviously, if you're working towards, if you're a part of a 6-year program, different story, right? I mean, but you're choosing that at the beginning. You have to know that going in, to plan properly. A couple other things that number wise, and we're talking about graduation rates and retention rates, I think are some that you really need to know. But you also need to know from an academic standpoint, like, what are the chances of me getting accepted? And you really have to also know what a school's acceptance rate is, right? And I think the other piece that you have to look at that is, do they offer early decision? Do they offer early action, right? What is the acceptance rate for early decision or early action? And what's the acceptance rate for regular decision? And if you're unfamiliar with those terms, early decision is essentially a binding contract. You can only apply to one school early decision, because if they accept you, that's where you're committed to going. And that's it. It's all she wrote. That's where you got to go. And you honestly, you don't know what the price of that school is going to be, right? You're signing on the dotted line without knowing what the cost is actually going to be. So I've unfortunately have seen it fail for a lot of families that have applied early decision, and then they're left with a bill that they can't afford, and they're trying to figure out how they can get out of it. And it's not an easy process, but they usually can't get out of it until, after May 1st. And all of a sudden they can't go to another school. So it might delay where they're going, or they have to go to community college or a different school for a year and then transfer somewhere else that might extend their life in college as well. So you have to definitely be aware of early decision. You will see acceptance rates that are higher for early decision. And that's because, again, we have to look at schools as businesses, right? And what schools are trying to accomplish when they offer someone an acceptance, they know that there's a chance that they may not enroll, right? And that's something called their yield. What that means is, I use the example of a wedding guest list, right? So if you're getting married and you have 100 seats at the reception, you are going to invite more than 100 people, right? And those are all the people that are on the A list. That's the first round of acceptances that basically go out. If you send out 150, invitations, and you only get 75 RSVPs, well, you still have 25 seats that you need to fill. And that's where you're going to go to your B list of guests, right? You're going to send out those invitations after you see the responses from the first round of invitations that you send out. That's in the college world known as what a wait list is, right? And so you won't, if you were waitlisted, you will not get an acceptance offer until after May 1st, right? So it's kind of like the RSVP deadline, hey, RSVP by March 17th, right? And then come March 18th, we see how many people RSVP to the weddings. All right, we got to invite more people, right? So that's kind of how the acceptance piece works. But what the yield is, like if you have to fill those 100 seats, it's how many people do you need to invite to fill those 100 seats? Is it 150? Is it 200? Is it 1,000? That's what the college yield is. And something else you can look up is another important statistic too. Well, the yield basically shows that how many students went elsewhere, right? So if you have a school with a very high yield, it means, yeah, I only had 100 seats to fill and I only had to invite 110 people, right? That's a very high yield. There's only 10 people that didn't enroll at that college. They didn't take that seat at the wedding. If you have to invite 500 people to fill the 100, well, maybe those people aren't as close to you as you thought, or you're competing with another wedding or something, just something, the date isn't right, but there's some reason with that. And so if you're looking at schools that are having to accept, a significant amount of more people to fill their seats, well, that means that students are choosing other schools, and there's probably a reason for that. So it's another number that not everyone always typically looks at is the yield ratio, right? And it's a number that goes big into college rankings. So the business side of what colleges are trying to do is reduce the amount of applications they have to send out to still fill the seats that they have. That's what they're trying to do. So if you are doing early decision, they know they've got you, right? They know that you are going to fill the seat. If you do early action, you're not required to go there. If you do regular decision or rolling decision, you are not required to go there. You would have until May 1st to choose what school you want to go to. Early decision does not have that. And so the schools are definitely going to accept more students off the early decision list as long as they are, have the grades and the right profile for what they're looking for, because now they know they don't have to compete with other students, right? They don't have to compete with other schools, right? They've got you. So they are going to have a higher acceptance rates off of the early decision because they know that all of those acceptance offers are turning into an enrollment. Whereas someone who's early action or regular decision, that's not always the case. So that's why the numbers are different, but you also don't just do early decision to any school without knowing the potential financial repercussions and how it works. Other numbers that I think are really important to research, and again, College Planning Network, a great place to view. And if you're unfamiliar, collegeplanningnet.com is where you go for that. But you also should be looking at what admitted students, what's their academic criteria, right? What's the average GPA? What is the average SAT score? How many students submitted an SAT or ACT score, right? These are all important to see what are the chances of you being admitted, right? If you have a 3.0 GPA and a 1200 SAT, and the school averages are a 4.0 GPA and a 1400 SAT, chances are you're on the lower end of the scale. You might not get accepted. And why I bring that up is you have to know what is realistic or not. You might have reach schools, but you also have to know, what are the chances of me getting accepted to these schools? Because if I build my list and I don't have a very high chance of getting into any of those schools, I'm going to be left with going to a school that probably doesn't have the social fit or the academic fit I need. And I'm going to be in school for more than 4 years because I change my major, I drop out, or I transfer to a school later on. So know those numbers as well to see how much are you in line with the type of student that they accept based on some of that criteria and those statistics. That can help build a solid list that you're not going to end up being completely left out with, a plan B, is just not on the table. And that's what the other piece that you really have to look at when building that school list. You want to have every school in your list be a reach school. Let's see, what else did I want to make sure that I covered today? Not all schools report this, but I also think it's one that is very interesting. And it is a college. It's one that I've only really seen on College Planning Network. But it's the college ROI, meaning the return on investment. And so what this will end up showing you, at least on the College Planning Network, is how many students were offered a job within 6 months of graduation, right? What type of loans? What's the average student loan balance that student graduates with at those schools? Because again, if you have a very low return on investment, you're kind of saying, oh, there's only 20% of our students have a job after 6 months, and the average loan balance for our students is at $60,000. Again, there's something going on that maybe you didn't know about. So doing the research and doing the planning that can get you to kind of realize some of those numbers may find schools that are a fit or are not, right? What are their loan balances and how many students have a job 6 months after graduating? Those are important numbers and just another statistic that you want to put in. Now, I think the last piece that I wanted to touch on today, so during our College Knowledge podcast, we had a great interview with Gloria Donnelly, and the full episode should be up on collegeknowledge.net or collegeknowledge.net. Yeah, collegeknowledge.net. Sorry. But she had a great takeaway that I just have to keep reiterating. And it was when we're building a college list, you have to look at the staff, the faculty, the professors. And this is unfortunately not a number that we can find, but it was very interesting. Another number that I think that we should be looking at. What she said is that if you're basically looking at a faculty list and you are talking about where those professors came from, right? So if you're looking at, let's just say it's St. Joe's, and there are 50% or more of the professors are either, only at St. Joe's, they've only ever taught there, they went to St. Joe's themselves as a student. That's really not a good look. There is something that is being missed. And Dr. Gloria Donnelly highlighted that it might be a money issue. It might not. It might be the reality that they cannot recruit professors into their organization, but there is something wrong. And having diversity from a just educational standpoint, that there are professors that came from other universities, there are professors that didn't go to that specific school, can really highlight that there is a culture of different types of learning. It's not, hey, we are set in our ways. Now, Dr. Donnelly also mentioned that it's not always the case, right? You might have a school that, is more, it might be specifically religious, or they might have certain criteria, and it doesn't always mean that it's a no-go, right? It doesn't always mean that, this is a school that only has, well, no, there might be some type of mission-based schools that have a high requirement on who their professors can be, and the only people that end up, being there are ones that attended that school. So it's not always the case, but it's another number that you really should look at. And I know that when my kids are going to be going to college, my Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to build is going to have some of that, like how diverse is the faculty? Did 60, 70, 80% of the faculty all attend that school? And wonder and say, okay, are they kind of set in their ways and not open to new styles of learning, or are they just have that tunnel vision, like, hey, this is the way we do it and it's the best? So I think that was really all I wanted to touch on today, just understanding that there's some numbers in the college world that not many people look into, but they are very important, and they're extremely important when you are building your college list, right? Because again, it's all about finding that academic, social, and financial fit to win at this game in and out in 4 years. That is the goal, right? Because if we can get in and out in 4 years, that means that we are paying less. And that is the goal that I try to help every one of my families with. So with that being said, I'm going to sign off. I have spring break in a couple weeks, but we will be back on the first Friday of April, which will be Friday, April 5th. And then we will be live again on Friday, April 19th next week. As always, if you like these videos, please, if you're getting good information and you want me to continue doing this, just give me a like, give me a subscribe, share it with friends so I know that you are listening and getting some of this valuable information that I love to educate families on. Until next time, all the best, take care, and for everyone out there, happy St. Patrick's Day.